Let me show you something, because she's what I'm always harping about, trying to teach you guys. Look at the necks. Something the Father told me, the Most High, when I was talking to him about all this. He told me, because I'm always looking at their eyes, he's like, look at the necks. See this? There's like a huge indent. Everybody has it in Hollywood. Singers have it, celebrities have it. And this is, see the ridges? The bone that goes across here. It stops right here, and there's like a deep hole, and then it picks up again on this side and goes this way, this bone. It's really strange. All these fakes and wannabes and lookalikes stepping into place celebrities. See this? See the ridges coming down her neck? That's not human, folks. And they got this big bulge in the center. In my book, Interview with the Devil, I asked Lucifer about it, and he said that's the telltale way to tell androids, clones, synthetics, robotoids. This the next. That's typical characteristic of the androids, synthetics, and clones. And that's from the horse himself.
Believe that they found a statue of Joseph from the Bible with the coat of many colors. And this is a rather long article, or else I would read it with you. But if you're familiar with the story of Joseph and the coat of many colors, his father was Jacob, and later named Israel. And Joseph is the one who was sold into slavery by his brothers, and then he went to work for the Pharaoh. But in this article, I'll just read it to you. Inside the chapel of the tomb was a statue, and I believe this was found in Egypt. Well, that would probably help for me to look at. Yes, okay. Why multicolored coat discovered in Egypt tomb could be Joseph's. Egypt experts were stunned when they discovered a statue of a high official in Goshen, decorated with what appeared to be a multicolored coat, leading them to speculate it could represent Joseph from the Bible. So that's where I'm getting this from. So this was found in Egypt, and it was thought to represent Joseph. Okay? Inside the chapel of the tomb was a statue. What we know from the statue is that this man had red hair. He had red hair. He had pale yellow skin. He had a throwing stick across his shoulder, and on the back of his shoulder, we see the faintest remains of paint-colored stripes from a multicolored coat. Dr. Roll claimed all the evidence pointed to the story of Joseph. He added, that matches exactly with the story of Joseph in the Bible. So I know that I'm going to get a lot of pushback on this, but I think that there is some evidence that Adam and Eve, or possibly at least Adam, would have had red hair, and that some of the human descendants, because of the DNA being passed down, would have had red hair, which would basically mean that just because you have red hair does not mean that you necessarily have Nephilim blood in you. That's what I'm getting at. It could be either or. And I think it's something that's fun to think about. But I know that a lot of people, believers especially, when they hear this, they get scared. They're thinking, oh my word, what if it's true? What if I have Nephilim blood in me? Does that make me inherently evil? And no, I would say no, just because by this point in time, it would have been watered down. And if you have accepted, Jesus as your savior, and you are know who he is and what he has done for you, then I would say that even if you did have Nephilim blood in you, it would have been watered down to the point where it's moot at this time, and it would just be DNA. But I would also say that just because you have red hair doesn't mean that it automatically came from the angels. I think that's speculation. All of this is speculation. It could go either way. It could come from either the Watchers, or it could have come from Adam and Eve. Because, and I will also say that in the book, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy by Gary Wayne, In chapter 14, he actually talks about a group of people who were said to have been formed on day 6, and they were called the Blackheads. Now, I have mentioned this in one of my other videos, I think the one about Adam and Eve, and what that is basically saying is that there are 2 separate creation accounts. Now, some people will say that it is just it's just retellings of the same account. Other people will say, no, it is 2 parallel creation accounts. The day 6 people are a separate race of people from Adam and Eve. The day 6 people were just the general populace being created. And according to at least Gary Wayne in Genesis 6, and according to the Sumerians, they would have had black hair, these people who were created on day 6. Because again, they were known as the Blackheads. I don't know which one it is, but I think that it is interesting. If the people on day 6 would have been known as the Blackheads, it would also mean that Adam and Eve, who were not then created at the same time, if you are following this narrative, would have been distinguished from them by not having black hair. So I think that that is interesting to think about. And I'll just read this quickly to you. It just says, according to Sumerian traditions, derived from the Assyrian tablets, the first humans were known as the Blackheads. Although most of the antediluvian clay tablets have been lost to history, many survived to the time of Ashurbanipal, circa 668 to 633 BC. So again, that's just a quick passage from chapter 14 on the Genesis 6 conspiracy. So that's another really interesting look at things. And again, I'm not telling you to, just 100% believe everything that you read right away. Research things, because I research things all the time, and I am on the fence about most things, to be quite honest. If it is not explicitly spelled out in the Bible, then for me, it is much easier to question. So for example, in Genesis, well, actually the entire book of Genesis is said to be written in a linear fashion. If all of Genesis was written in a linear fashion from start to finish, okay, from the earliest of times, and then it just goes along chronologically, if that is consistent with all of Genesis, why would there be 2 accounts of the same story?
That the Yahweh created the Isha in order to mate with the humans. So Genesis 2 verse 23 says, the flesh of this one shall be chosen. The Isha will marry the humans. And now that makes sense because it says they're now using a technology that makes them appear beautiful, a technology that the Yahweh gave them, but that was forbidden by the early creators. In Genesis 2, it says initially they were bare and were not confused. And in chapter 3, the meaning of bare becomes clear. We're told the Yahweh wear clothing of light. The image is their outward appearance. So anyone who is bare is one who is not using the image, not wearing the cloak of light that changes their appearance. So Genesis 3 tells us the Isha and the humans with them started using this cloak of light, and they also learned how to distinguish between those who were wearing the cloak and those who weren't. And this cloak of light is all throughout the Bible. It's the coat of many colors that Jacob gave to Joseph. We know colors are frequencies of light, so Joseph's coat of many colors was a coat of light. And we're told in Revelation 13 that the image is a deceiving clothing of light. And in Genesis 3, we're told the shaft is what changes the Isha's appearance, making them beautiful. So the shaft is a shaft of light. We're also told Satan transforms into an angel of light, and we know Satan is another name for the serpent, which is the image. So that confirms another connection between the Isha's beauty, the cloak, and the purpose of that beauty cloak, which is to mate with the humans. So we're told in Lamentations 2 and Isaiah 3 that those who use the technology that makes them beautiful will be cast down. The technology will be taken away from them. And in Genesis 3, it tells us the ones using the image technology are the Isha and the humans with the Isha. So there are both humans and hybrids using it. But we also know the image came from Yahweh. They were the first ones using it before the Isha were created. So both Lamentations 2 and Isaiah 3 say the Adonai will take this deceiving technology away, and the daughter of Zion and the Yahweh will be bare. So we left off in Genesis 3 verse 7 that says, and the appearance of them both blossomed, and they learned to distinguish who was bare. And the next part of this verse may be the most important point of all. It says, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves aprons. But this word translated as leaves, number 5929, also means branch. So it says they sewed the fig branch together and made themselves aprons, or number 2290, which also means armor, either aprons or armor. And notice this word stems from 2296, which means to bind on. So it says they sewed the fig branch together and made themselves bound on armor. So verse 7 says, and the appearance of them both blossomed, and they learned to distinguish who was bare, and they sewed the fig branch together and made themselves bound on armor. And this bound on armor, or apron, is also referenced in Isaiah 3. Is said in verses 20 and 24 that after their beauty is gone, that attire of the breathing substance of human bodies, the serpent charming enchantment, it says, after that is gone, it shall come to pass that instead of sweet smell, there shall be stink, and instead of an apron or armor, an encircling robe. So this is confirmation again that the putting on of the apron armor is actually the putting on of the image, the cloak of light, the attire of the breathing substance of human bodies, the serpent charming enchantment, the changeable suits of apparel, the covering membrane, the coat of many colors, or the cloak. So we know the texts tell us the image technology is made of light, and light is electromagnetic radiation within a certain portion of the electromagnetic spectrum. So the Bible tells us the cloak is made of light. Light is electromagnetic radiation, and an electromagnetic field looks similar to a ring. Even the magnetic field around the earth is shaped like a ring. So the appearance ring in Isaiah 3 may refer to an electromagnetic field. But the book of Revelation says, starting in number 6 here, it says, the image deceives by the means of the mark. So it says the Lamb who speaks like a dragon was given the mark to make the outward appearance of the beast. And that mark, it says in number 11 here, is also put on the right hand or the forehead, and they buy or sell with it. So we know they're already doing that with the RFID chip, and we know they also have microchip tattoos that they're doing the same thing with. So at this point, it does look like the microchip itself is the mark. So that means, because it says here that the mark is how they are able to create the outward appearance, that means that the cloak of light, the outward appearance, is made with the help of microchips. In other words, it's microtechnology. And this is a concept that can be conceived of in modern times. It's depicted in modern television and movies regularly. It's sometimes called shape-shifting. And it has been in the Bible for thousands of years, only it was covered up until now.